Welcome to today's Creators Live. Woo! Yeah! Today we're going to be talking about how to transport the machine.
When you transport your machine, don't put it on a forklift.
That's right. Yeah, you guys learned the hard way. Don't just put it straight on the forklift. We'll get back to that. I did want to kind of ask you guys some questions about the results of that. So who has some wins to share with us? Any volunteers?
Hey there, I'll share one just because it was from a different episode. Hi, everybody. So business has been going well. Got a lot of tournaments where I'm doing the participation shirts and the fan gear as well in these next couple months. So it's been really super busy, but I am redesigning my own website. And yes, I had written all the copy on it before, but I used your AI suggestion. I had AI write every single piece of copy over again. And the wording is just like 1,000 times better.
Yeah, there we
And
go.
you use a lot of commands like, be briefer or all these different things so you can make it more of a natural speak. But I have to say, it's basically the same content and the same layout, but with a new look and AI wording. And oh my God, it was pretty intense. I also had I might do a presentation in Florida for a bunch of runners, race directors, for custom merchandise and opening stores for smaller events that don't have the budget to do their own merch. And I had AI based off of like 10 bullet points that I just briefly wrote. I had AI write the entire program synopsis of it, and it was amazing. And the people running it loved it. So we probably will end up doing that next year in Florida.
Awesome. Okay. So really leveraging that AI to your benefit.
When it comes to the copy, yes, for sure.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah.
Mauricio agrees, he says.
Yeah. I mean, I'm super stoked by the way it looks. It's almost there. It hasn't been published yet. I got to do one more thing, but in terms of the copy, it's all there.
Awesome. You'll have to get us the link once it's live.
I will show it to you.
Sweet. All right. Any other volunteers for wins from this last week?
Okay. Last week I finished up 275 t-shirts for an organization.
Oh yeah. Tell us more.
It took me 3 weeks to get it done.
Okay.
And for one person, it was a lot. Pre-treating, going back and forth because the pre-treat is in another room and the equipment is in this room. So, and also my website should be going live by the beginning of June.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Sister
Awesome.
DNA.
Everyone's tightening up their websites. That's what I like to hear. Thank you for joining us, Stacy. I see you popped in here. Do you have a win to share with us today?
Yeah, I'm getting my DTF machine in another week, I think, 2, something like that.
All right.
Before I
DTF
go on
is coming
vacation.
in.
Yeah. And we redid the entire studio at the shop and got more orders coming in. So it's always a win.
Beautiful. We just
I'm here. I'm here. That's a win, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. And our unboxing and assembly video for the Omni DTF, we just finished shooting. When was that? Monday? Tuesday? Man, time's a blur. But we just finished shooting that, so that'll be available soon. So you'll have that handy for when your equipment arrives.
Did you wear the police outfit though?
No, didn't wear the police outfit.
I won't watch it. Never mind.
I'm sure our guys can make it happen though.
There you go.
I knew that would get traction. Okay. All right. So today we're talking about transporting the equipment. Thank you everybody who shared their wins. I think that's a nice little way to get everybody off of mute from time to time and get the conversations going. So this is going to be specific to the FreeJet models. but the same idea will transfer to the other equipment with some changes. Especially the DTF will be more substantially different. But for the i2, it'll be almost the same. Michael and Yvonne, you have your hand raised?
So I just wanted to ask everybody, you guys introduced us to a company in Pennsylvania, and the name of the company is Rusty Dog. And one of the owners passed away today. And so I was hoping that everybody could keep them in their thoughts and prayers.
I think we can certainly do that. Thank you for letting us know. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for letting us know about that. So packing the machine, kind of a tough segue off of that. Okay, packing the machine for transportation. Not necessarily for shipping it. It will be the same process if you need to ship it, but the intention here is in the case that the equipment is being transported to a new shop, or moving it from bedroom in your house to the garage, or something like that, because we're not going to be talking about packing it onto a pallet or anything like that. So we're just talking about prepping the machine so you can throw it in the back of your car, back of the truck, something like that, and transport it fairly easily. And it's really not too much to do. As you'll see, it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna take the platen off, and you want to do all of your regular maintenance items. So you're gonna clean the capping station, clean the underside of the head, wet cap it. That's your first step. From there, then you're gonna go ahead, you're gonna empty the ink bottles. You don't have to clean them, but if you saw the, what was it, 2 weeks ago, we talked about cleaning out your ink bottles. Go ahead and do that. I think that's just a good time to do it since you'll already be emptying the ink out anyway. And you're gonna run a strip of tape over all the bottles once they're empty and replaced. So, like so. All right. That'll hold down the bottles, keep them from moving around. Make sure they're empty, clean. You want to basically empty all of the fluids out of the machine, except for the wet cap. Got to keep it wet capped. You're going to empty the cleaner out of the cleaner bottle, empty your waste bottle. And what I would recommend, this is not in our published instructions, this is a Bryan special instruction. Put a little strip of tape to hold this guy. Oops. Put a little strip of tape to hold the waste bottle in place, because I find that sometimes when it's being transported, this little guy will come off. So you'll just do something like that. Just get it right on there. So that'll help keep it on. Your next step is going to be looking at, we talked about the spit tray over here last week. So if you haven't recently cleaned it, if there's fluid in there, you either need to take it out and clean it, or stuff like a paper towel in there to soak up the excess, and then you're going to put a piece of tape over the top of that too. Basically, you just got to secure all those fluids. So let's say we didn't just clean that 2 weeks ago and the printer hasn't been run since then. Do one of them. Okay, just put a strip of tape right on over it. Next step is going to be the shipping brackets. So we have a lot of FreeJet owners here in the group. I need a show of hands. How many of you still have your yellow shipping brackets? And if you don't mind showing me a show of hands for how many people have lost or misplaced them. Tony, that's okay. They're easy to lose. If you have them and you don't need them, I recommend you, are we able to get more in on here? Okay, so usually they'll be secured to the gantry like so, with some screws. When you take it off, just take off one screw and loosen the other one, and you can just turn it around like that. Put all the screws back into their original holes, and then when you need it, you just turn it around. Easy. Alternatively, I've seen folks who will remove everything and put it in a Ziploc bag, tape it to the back of the machine. However you want to keep track of it, you need to secure those back. So you're going to turn these around, attach the screws, attach those shipping brackets. So that's going to lock the gantry into place, and you need to make sure that when you're doing this, the printer is off, unplugged, because just like when you first received the machine, you do not want to then turn the machine on by mistake while those brackets are secured. That's tough on the motors, and it's really not great for the machine. So brackets are secured. Our next step is going to be, and I guess I didn't make this realization beforehand, but there really is quite a bit of tape involved with this process. I'm going to take a piece of tape, tape down the lid. Make sure when you're doing this that all of the clips are closed and you've taken care of all of the maintenance items that you need to do within the gantry. And a strip of tape just like that. Okay. And then last step, this actually went much quicker than I was expecting it to. Your last step is just to get an extra pair of hands and load it up into the car. Put it in the back seat of your Prius, and you're ready to rock and roll. I don't remember who it was, but way back in the day when I was still doing training for customers, we did have someone who picked up their equipment in their Prius, and we had to turn it sideways and put it through the door of the back seat. So it does fit in some model Priuses. Any questions about that? Any other tips for people who have done this in the past? I would say, just off of my own experience, you can go ahead and remove the plunger and maybe secure that somewhere else as well. It's also a good idea just to take pictures of everything before you pack it up, so that when you're unpacking it, you can compare and make sure everything's still looking normal. And that's really it. So, man, this topic went way faster than I was thinking it would, but that's all right. It's, I think, really important information, and it's something I get asked a lot. So are there any questions about packing up the machine or any extra tips? Stacy's got her hand up.
I would just say, if you have to turn it on its side for the Prius thing, wouldn't that remove the water from the wet cap or the solution?
It's a pretty good seal, so as long as you've done your maintenance nicely, when you turn it sideways, worst case, what's gonna happen is that the cleaning solution will drip onto the pad that's underneath the pump.
Huh, okay. Learn something new every day.
Valerie is asking, Brian, my plunger's top just crumbled. Can I buy just the plunger? Yes, you can. So over time, this little baby plunger here does wear out from the stress of supporting the spring. So the top over time will crack, and they are available for purchase to replace. I don't remember off the top of my head what size plunger that is. If you were planning to source that elsewhere, it is, you know, one of the usual sizes. I just don't know off the top of my head. Victor has a nice tip in here. Super glue a quarter to the top that helps reinforce it. Stacy, you have another question?
I was just gonna say, we put a washer on the top of ours and hot glued it on there. E6000 will do the same thing and get it on there really nicely.
Yeah, it just needs a little bit of help to with the rigidity, so that spring doesn't compromise it over time. Authorine is saying the bubble pump doesn't push cleaner through anymore. So that's talking about this guy. Let me move this so we can get in tight here. So Authorine, you're saying that the little choke pump here is giving you problems. First thing you want to do is check this clip. Obviously, I'm sure you know that the clip is open. I don't need you to verify that for me. What you do want to do is, just like with the ink lines, you do want to move the clip and massage where it's pinching the line. I don't know if you've been doing that. I do know that from our facility, the tubing for this length here is tucked away and you don't really have much room. So you can pull some slack from the bottom side of that tubing. So give yourself some slack there, move the clip, massage where it was pinching the line. That should help you out there. Otherwise, and we're going to want to look right here. We're going to get in here. The next thing you want to do is examine in here and make sure these guys are looking okay. So if one of these is like kinked, like so, you may have an issue with that. Alternatively, the kink may be, and we want to be looking back over here, sir. Right behind here. I do want to show this. Okay. So I'm going to show you something here that you don't get to see very often if you don't have the machine. We don't really look over here very much. So I'm going to flip the machine around without crashing it into our TVs. Okay. All right, so right in here, this is where the plunger goes in, right? The tubing for this clip and that connects to the choke pump is going to go through here and it wraps around, it comes through here, and that's where you see it through that side panel that I just showed you. So take off your cleaner bottle and examine this. Make sure there's not a kink in here as well. That's a good place to also look, because what sometimes happens is when you're going to screw on the cap, the little teeth on the side of the cap will catch on the tube sometimes, and it can kink or it can get it into a weird position where it doesn't flow very easily. In some cases, over time, the choke pump itself does break. There's a little valve in there, and if it gets broken, you might not be able to pump. So I want you to check and make sure it's not kinked somewhere before I recommend considering replacing it. But replacing it is pretty easy. Give me 1 second to take it out carefully. So this little choke pump is attached. Let's see. Do I have something white to put behind it? So it's attached with these little tabs. So you push the tabs in and this will come up. You'll hold it from below, so you'll hold both tubes. You'll disconnect it if it's really, really stuck. If you have the slack for it, you can cut it. And then when you put it back on, make sure you put those tubes all the way on. You really don't want any fluids leaking. So you get those tubes all the way onto the connectors with the new choke pump. But like I said, make sure that you've checked the full length of line all the way to the pump to make sure it's not clogged in the tubing before you consider replacing this guy. So follow that tube all the way to the pump. And then when you put it back, this hole has little tabs where you line up the tabs on the part itself. And you just push it in and it locks into place. Any questions, Authorine, on that?
That little valve that you mentioned inside that dome,
Yep.
it floats around. Is
Okay.
it supposed to float around?
No, ma'am.
you know, when I'm pushing on the dome, it moves around.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. So I would say if you're not confident with the instructions I just gave you about removing the part and replacing it, it is a pretty easy one, but if you want to connect with tech support, and they'll be able to walk you through it as well. Okay, any other questions? Let's see. Ron says time to replace it. Yeah, so if there's a little floaty in there, that ain't right. Okay, let's see. Let me put this back. I wanted to also ask the group, who was here last week while I was gone? All you guys, pretty much. How did Mikey do? I understand he covered some software stuff. Did he do a good job? Did it leave you with any other questions from last week's topic? Any good takeaways that you wouldn't mind sharing with me that we can make sure to share with other people moving forward? John says, I found that the choke pumps are the same used for chainsaws. Yeah, so it is pretty much the same that you would find for chainsaws and lawnmowers and things like that. It's just a standard choke pump.
Bryan, I do have a few other questions. I know I haven't been here and Wurk and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know when I'm doing the nozzle check or the nozzle print.
Uh-huh.
Is the yellow print supposed to show up on the platen?
Yes. So
Because I even though it prints yellow, I see the red, the blue, and the black, but I hardly ever see yellow print. And from one of the episodes that you had, I went back and I looked at an episode where someone was talking about the dampers being clogged or something like that. So,
okay.
but even I've used the yellow ink and it prints perfect yellow. It just never prints out on the plant.
So yellow is pretty much the hardest color to see in the nozzle check, even more so than the white. The white kind of stands nicely against the metal when you print it on here. So it'll do the 4 squares of white, and then your CMYK colors with yellow on the very end. It's a mirror of the order of the ink in the lines. So it just prints reverse, right?
Do you know, I don't think I've ever seen, except for the first time when I got my machine, I saw 4 white, now I only have 3. I don't understand why, but I only have 3.
Okay.
And
Do you have DTF?
no, I have direct to garment.
Okay, so what I mean is, like, do you have the like the sheets to do it on
Oh,
your
yes, I
desk?
do. Uh-huh.
Okay. Let me have you print the nozzle check onto a DTF sheet, print it onto the glossy side, and then you should be able to see everything very nicely, and it should photograph pretty nicely too. Send me a picture of it, and then we'll take a look together.
Okay, great.
You have my email, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Okay. The other question that I had was when I had to write them down because I'll forget. So when I'm setting my environment and I choose dark or black color option, does the printer automatically knows to use the white underbase without me even choosing to go with white underbase?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so the environment will determine whether or not it gets a white underbase. If you choose the white environments, so the white cotton, white polyester,
Yeah.
that tells it you're printing on a white shirt and it doesn't need to print white ink. Dark and black both will require white underbase, so you don't need to define that manually, it's preset.
Brian, I found that out sometimes when you do certain purples and you select the black environment,
Yes.
doesn't print the purple properly. So I almost stopped doing black at all and I just do color.
Yeah, I pretty much will do the color or dark environments exclusively for a similar reason, because just like how the white environment tells the printer not to use white ink because the shirt is white, the black environment tells it oh, this is a black shirt, we don't need to print black ink. We can just use the color of the shirt. But for some things, that's not a very good option. For like the example that you gave, Victor, the purple does require some black ink in that case. And so that's why it's not looking as rich as you need it to. It was probably turning out too blue, right?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay, Stacy.
but it was beautiful when I did it in color.
Good, good. Yeah, so for those of you who have the 330 TX, you're going to have two different sets of environments that aren't black and white environments. You'll have the color, and then you'll have dark. Dark will print just like the white underbase that the black environment gets. So it'll do a gradient white underbase. The software determines for the different areas of the graphic what needs a stronger white base. The color environments say it doesn't matter what color is going on top of the white. We're just going to put a solid white underbase. So that's what the differentiating feature there is. And then Stacy, you have a question or something to add?
Well, I was just gonna say, when I do my print, at the beginning of the day, I actually use a laminate sheet, and I take, I have lint-free cloths, and I just run the water across the front of the platen, and it holds it down so I don't have to tape it, and it won't go anywhere. I use it with all my DTF stuff too. And then I print it because my lighting is at that angle. I can't see all the different colors, but I can lift that up and put it on black, and then I can see everything. And I just clean it with alcohol every day, and then I use it over and over and over and over.
I think I might be able to enhance your process just a little bit. When you're putting the DTF sheets or the transfer or whatever kind of sheets onto your platen, use alcohol, because then you don't have to dry it afterwards. It'll just evaporate when you're done.
Well, actually, what's weird is the water does too, because I use a lint-free cloth, and I just put a little tiny bit.
Put a real tiny amount. Okay.
Yeah. And
Nice.
it's perfect because it holds down both sides, and then I don't have the smell of alcohol all day.
All
If I'm
right.
doing a lot, if I'm doing a lot of it.
If you're doing a lot of it. Okay. Nice. Good tip. Did you have any other questions, Authorine?
Well, it's not a question. It's just one of the things that I'm able to use because of I had a situation and I had to call a tech, and told me to use, instead of the alcohol, I wanted to see what my print was, how my print was coming out on the platen. And I used the super cleaner.
Yep.
So that when the print, I was able to see my colors perfectly.
Yeah.
I didn't have that haze that the alcohol would give, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No.
I just used a little bit of that super nozzle cleaner.
Super nozzle cleaner. Yeah. So it's got a little bit more dye in it. So that coating onto the platen helps the colors stand out better. So yeah, awesome. And that's a good tip for anyone else who still prints their nozzle check onto the platen directly. That's a good way to be able to see it better. And Stacy is asking Emily, what software did he review? I missed it. You'll have to catch that once it goes up on YouTube if it's not already up. It's going up today. So Stacy, the last week's episode is going up today, so you'll be able to watch it. That's nice turnaround time. I like that. Cool. Okay, let's see. Any other questions? Michelle. And then we'll get back to Stacy. It looks like she has another one. Oh, no.
Sorry, did I cut Stacy off?
No, I think she had her hand raised from the last one.
Okay. I've been doing a lot of prints on the production mode.
Okay.
So I printed, I don't know, let's say 80 shirts.
Nice.
One day I went back to go in and print them again, the remaining of them the next day, and it says that I lost that environment. How do I get those back, and why do I keep losing them?
That's a really good question. Maybe it has something to do with Windows updates. I know pending Windows updates give us a lot of issues for some reason. So I would check for that first. Another thing to see is whether or not you're running as administrator every time.
I am doing that.
Okay, so if you're running as administrator every time, if they're going away, let's see, I don't have the RIP in front of me, but you have the little like planet icon next to the drop-down list for the environments. If you click that, there should be a little like refresh button or a little recycle symbol at the bottom center of the screen. And that's how you can refresh to like having all of the environments again. But if you've uploaded any other ones, like the DTF environments, those ones will go away. It's resetting to the defaults. So you'll have to reinstall those if that's the case.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would say if it continues to give you issues, try uninstalling the software, reinstalling it to a different location on your hard drive.
Okay. I'll try that too then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions? Valerie. Nice to see you, Valerie. Let's hear your question.
Does anyone else have an issue with going back to once I print the image and I'm going to save it? If I save it with the settings, it adds an extension to it. And I can't remember what that extension is, like P something. Then the next
ST.
time, if I want to use that file, the RIP software says that it's not compatible.
You have to open up your original file and it'll pull the settings in.
Oh.
Okay, yeah,
That setting is just a temp file that it puts in the folder with the settings. Those settings don't get embedded into the art. So all you have to do is go back and open up the original art, and then those settings should present themselves automatically in the RIP.
okay. And that's what I'm doing. I just wondered, was it supposed to be? Once I noticed that after doing it a couple of times, then I didn't do it anymore and was just wondering.
No, that's not
So, okay.
that's not an art file. That's a temp file that the
Okay.
RIP.
Okay, thanks, Victor.
Yeah, sorry, I hope that's right, but that's how it works in my machine.
Well, I know it doesn't work, and it didn't make sense to me because it says if you wanted to save the settings. So now I just don't.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
I would save those settings because I have all my art. Every single art sits in its own folder and it's all numbered. And so if you look at the folder, when I first put the art there, it's just a Photoshop file.
Okay,
And then when I use it and I hit save settings, it creates that settings file. But now I have two files that are created in that folder. And so when I go back and I open up that Photoshop file, it brings back those settings in. But
okay,
this is the part where I'm kind of unclear, Brian, and maybe you can help me out. I typically don't have to change settings from art to art. I usually keep the same setting over and over. So is the RIP bringing in that temp file every time I open up the art and print it, or is it using the previous file's settings? Because sometimes I do notice that, like, I'll do one design where it's just the white underbase and I don't do the color, and that's just a random one. But then just because I open up a new file, it holds that setting in place. And so if I forget to undo or reset the environment, my next file gets printed with just the white underbase.
Yeah, I would say if you're saving settings to the environment, it's going to carry over. That's not like specific to the graphic, but when you're closing the graphic and it prompts you to like save that will be graphic specific.
but that's the one that then when I go back to use it, it says it's not recognized.
But that's not the art file. That's just a settings file that somehow the machine makes and pulls in when you do art. I have no idea. But
Yeah,
it's-
I'm not super familiar with the like saving the settings because I just set it up fresh every time. Granted, I don't do a lot of reorders, let's say, considering most of the stuff that I make is one-offs and I'll never print it again.
Mhm.
Or it's, our OmniPrint samples and I've printed them a million times and it's pretty basic settings. So maybe I'm not the best person to speak on that one. But hopefully that helps, Valerie. Let's see.
Yeah, thank
Offlane's got
you.
another question.
Well, I have a question and I wanted to share with Valerie. When I save a file on the RIP software, it automatically saves, you'll have two files. You'll have the PNG or vector or whatever it is you use, plus the PST file. And when you click on the file, you have to make sure that you click on the one that says PNG and not PST.
Mhm.
Okay. And my question was, when I was going to make an order today and I saw where Wurk, and I never did get to that when I started learning the classes or taking the lessons that you guys provide for the machine. And I never did get around to Wurk, but I'm interested in it, especially now that my website is getting ready to go live. So my question is Wurk like a website, or is it a site that can be used along with my website?
The second one. So it's something you'll integrate to your site to take those orders. Michael and Yvonne and Ron here have gone, at least I know Ron's finished his. I haven't checked in on how far along Michael and Yvonne are with theirs, but they both have Wurk. Ron, if you don't mind speaking a little bit on it, since I know you finished the setup for it.
Yeah, it's pretty doggone easy. I integrated that right with into my website, and basically what I did on my base website, I created a header that says design a shirt. When they click that link, it goes right to Wurk, right to the page, so that the customer can just take off from there and go.
Do you have a link that you can share with us so she can see what
Yeah.
you've set up?
You would ask that
too.
question.
I haven't seen your setup yet. I'd like to see it too.
Come on, Rob.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm in the middle of.
Ron gets that.
I'm almost
We'll give
done.
him a
I'm
little
almost
buffer
done with
time.
it. The site's ready to go live. I got a couple tweaks I got to do to it, and I'm hoping by Friday they have the whole new site totally up and running again. So
Yeah, right on.
whew,
You'll have
it's been
to
a
share it with
Good
the
luck.
Facebook group once it's live.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
been a
good
work in
luck.
progress, that's for sure. 'Cause, me and Shopify just did not mesh.
Wow. I got to talk to you guys. Hang around.
Yeah, so Authorine, what I would say is reach out to Edgar. He's our premier of Wurk software. So we're going to drop his email, shoot him a message that you're interested in Wurk, and he'll get you drowning in information on it.
Thank you.
You'll get, how many times a week do you guys get emails on setting up Wurk with the instructions? 7 days a week? Get one every single day.
And then some. Thanks, guys.
And it's like new instructions every time. It's like, okay, so now that you're finished with this part, and he's just assuming that you did the last one. A lot of good information from Edgar. So his email's in the chat, so you can go ahead and reach out to him about it, and he'll get you all taken care of there. Okay, all right. Any other questions? Did I miss any questions in the chat? Tony's got a question. Let's hear from you, Mr. Tony. Doing great.
Okay, so the question I had is, I had the chest platinum. The chest platinum.
Yep, I've got one here.
So I had difficult lining up the print on the chest platinum. I mean, not the chest, the pocket, for the pocket.
Yep.
Yes. So how do I set it up where it prints right directly on that?
Yeah, so setup in the RIP is going to be basically the same. So you're going to do top center. Just make sure your image is, let's see, do I have the dimensions written on here?
I usually do like, 3.5 by 3.5 or sometimes 4 by 4.
Yeah. Yeah, so when you're working with smaller size platinums, you do need to be aware of margins. So we're used to putting a 2-inch margin on everything. When you load up your pocket, let's say you load it up right here in the middle. You have maybe like 3/4 of an inch here before you hit your desired print area. So you got to make sure that your art is not going to get pushed over the edge of the platen because the software isn't going to stop you like with the adult platen. So you do all of your setup in the RIP the same. Just be mindful of your margins plus your image size not exceeding the platen size.
Okay,
So
Okay.
6 by 6.5 here. Let's say it's 6.5 in this direction.
mhm,
So you can't have your image taller than 4 and 4.25 inches if you're gonna put a
okay,
3/4.
so you set up as top center.
Yep, top center.
Okay.
And then
Because when I
this
print,
side
usually
goes
print
over here.
half of it off the, I said, when I print it, it prints part of the design, prints off the platinum part, off that chest, the pocket part. That's
Okay.
it.
I suspect there's a very common mistake going on then when you're setting up the job. So
Okay.
when you do the job setup, you select your environment.
Mhm.
Either you're selecting pallet size and you're choosing the chest platen from the drop-down list.
Okay,
Leave it on shirtboard standard. Leave it on the 12.5 by 18. Do your environment normal. In the Q rip, adjust the size and do the
Mhm.
top center. When you click print setup on that next screen, there's another grid that looks like the one that you click for top center. Don't click that one because if you click it, everything's going to be about 1/4 inch off center.
okay,
So that's the setting to tell the computer where the platen is. So if you click that, it's going to throw off the adjustment and everything's going to be off.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So hopefully that helps out. If not, you have my email, right?
No, I don't have your email.
Okay, we're going to drop it in the chat here, Bryan
Okay.
at omniprintonline.com.
Thank you, Brian.
Of course.
On the different size platens, of course, I just have still the original one. But in printing polos that have the buttons on them, and I know when you do the height adjustment,
Mhm.
does it automatically adjust for the buttons, or do I need to put something in there? Like I have a thick mouse pad to allow for that for the buttons.
Yeah, so if is there a reason you're not just going to get the platen for it? Save yourself the trouble.
Well, when the Benjamins come in, right, I will.
Okay.
But it all depends on Benjamins right now.
Yep, I hear that. I hear that. Okay.
So I got to have a workaround.
So a spacer in the meantime is going to be the way to go. Don't trust the height adjustment to do a perfect job every time. If you're doing function rear, you're really leaving yourself vulnerable to a head strike on those buttons. So put a spacer in there, raise up your intended print area higher than those buttons. You're going to have maybe some difficulties with lining it up nicely because it's going to be, custom set up every time into that shirt. You're going to have to put the spacer in there every time you put on a new shirt, right? Where with the platen, it's going to be the same. So what you'll do is put your little riser into the top right corner instead of center. And you're going to do your graphic top right corner in the software. And so that's how you're going to do your registration. And then it has room to have your buttons over the edge. Does that sound good? Any questions with that? Anything else before we wrap it up for today?
Well, one more
Okay.
thing. Is there a tutorial for, I remember you did it on a hoodie, was it a hoodie or a sweatshirt? Is there a tutorial? Can I do the same thing with my t-shirts? Like for bigger, like the 3Xs and the whatever, the larger t-shirts, so that the print can go further across the chest than as if it was just 12.5 by 18.
Yeah, that's going to be super easy.
Yeah.
So you have your platen. Usually you load the collar on the narrow side. You're just going to load the collar sideways. You're going to rotate your graphic to be appropriate to the position of the collar. And then add your margin and you're all set.
I think the challenge that I was having was centering it so that when it print, it wouldn't be too much over here. The print wouldn't be too much over to the left or too much to the right. It's just getting it centered was my challenge.
When you have it on here, you're using the standard adult platen.
Yeah.
You're going to load the collar. Let's say you have the collar towards the control panel.
Okay.
In your direct rip, you're going to rotate your image 90 degrees counterclockwise, and that'll put your image the correct orientation over here. From there, you're gonna add a little bit of a margin, and you're gonna do left center instead of top center.
Okay.
And then when you add your margin, you're still not using that top margin like we're used to. You got to use the left margin now.
Mhm.
And from there, it ought to be center. Now, centering the shirt on the platen
Exactly.
is a little bit of a trick depending on the size of the shirt. But since you're saying you're doing this for larger size shirts, let's see, I would say that's a really good question. I can't say that I have a good technique pre-built for that. Does anybody in here do extra wide prints in a similar fashion that they can give some tips on? How do you center your shirts when it's sideways? Usually I'll just take like the collar seams if the arm seams are too far over the edge. And I'll center it by that just using feel. Valerie has her hand raised. Do you have a tip for this?
I did one, and what I did was pretty much kind of what you said about turning the orientation of the design. And then what I did to make sure that it was printing in the correct location. And then I actually turned the garment across the platen instead of doing it how you would typically load it. And mine came out in the right place, if that makes sense. That worked for me to turn it the same orientation of the design. So I put the garment crossways. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense. And I understand what you're saying. It's just censoring it. When I am here and I am printing, how do I take my t-shirt and where I normally would take that tag that's in there, center it to the middle of the printer? Well, how do I do that? How do I center that tag here? That's
so a trick going back to doing HTV is that one of the tricks that was used for centering there was to do a light seam down the middle, like on the heat press.
Okay.
But mine, when I did the corner image, and by turning the shirt or instead of doing the placement in the center, I was doing it on top left. So when I did the top right, it printed where I needed it to print, because the orientation on the sleeve on the shirt, by turning it crossways, the sleeve of the shirt lined up where it needed to be, and therefore I didn't have to manipulate a whole lot. It came out just where on one run.
Thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
All right,
Thanks,
this has
Bryan.
been some good stuff. A lot of good questions today. A lot of good questions. And I see a answer from Maria in there. And Victor has a good input that if possible, DTF might solve some of those positioning problems as well. Because then you just position it once the print's already done, when it's on the heat press. So hopefully that helps you out. We're going to go ahead and close it out for today. It looks like the screens are not behaving today. So
Yeah, wonder why you were in the dark.
I'm lost in the void.
Yeah.
Yeah, the club is closing, Victor says. That's funny. So we'll go ahead and close the club for today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific. Bye.